Yes, good afternoon, friends. Is my voice clearly audible to everyone? You can write down in chat box. Is my voice clearly audible to everyone? You can write down in chat box. Is voice clearly audible? Is my voice audible to everyone? Write down in chat box. Okay, fine. So now we are going to today discuss about. Okay, can you see the slide? Everyone can see the slide also. So, in epidemiology, there are various types of the studies. Among them, two studies are being frequently asked in your exam. That is case control study and cohort study. Okay. So, case control study already it has been taken. Now about the cohort study, but before that, you should also know about the definition of epidemiology. What is epidemiology? Right, so it is what study of distribution and determinants of the health related states or events in specified population and application of this study to the control of the health problem. Right, so what does it say? That study of distribution of health related status, right? It means how much population is affected in Gujarat, how much population is affected by COVID in Maharashtra. So that is the example of distribution of health related status, right? How much how many I want to say age group per distribution. One of the example is age group per distribution. How many children are affected by COVID, how many adults are affected by COVID, or how much percentage of the adult are affected by COVID. These are the examples to explain you the distribution of health related status. Then determinant of the health related status means what are the factors that can cause any particular health related event. For example, what are the factors which cause hypertension, right? So age is one of the important determinant of the health related status for hypertension, right? Age wise, gender wise, sex wise, right? Then taking salty diet, taking high fat diet, right? This can lead to the hypertension as well as cardiovascular disease. So these are called determinants, the factors which determine the health, right? So study of distribution and determinants of the health related status or events in specified population and the application of this study to the control of the health. And then we apply this study, then we apply this knowledge of epidemiology for the control of the health. For example, we know that high salt intake is the determinant of the hypertension. So for control of hypertension, patients are advised to take low salt, raw salt, right? So that is what? That is application of this study to control the health related problem, right? Let me check it again. Is it visible and is it audible to everyone? Right, so I think it is visible. The slide is clearly visible as well as audible to everyone. Write down in chat box. Is the slide as well as my voice is clearly audible and the slides are clearly visible? Write down in chat box. Cohort study can be asked frequently in your exam as a short note. So pay attention over here. Let me reply in chat box. Yes, some of the students has replied. Okay, voice audible, voice clearly audible. Okay, fine. So now we are moving further. So in analytical epidemiology is what? It is the subject of interest, right, in individual within the population. This consists of the case control study and cohort study. So these two studies, case control study and cohort study, types of these are types of analytical study, right? One of the video related to case control study has been already posted, right? Now we are learning about the cohort study. So one can determine the following with this study, that whether or not statistical association exists between disease and suspected factor. Whether there is association between disease and suspected factor is present or not, that can be determined with the help of such type of the analytical studies, right? Statistical association, that can be determined with the help of the statistical test, right? After data collection in such studies, statistical tests are applied, right? And statistical calculations are being carried out, and it will show whether there is a association between disease and suspected factor. For example, whether there is association between salt intake and hypertension, that can be calculated by such statistical way, right? So in such, if such exist, such association exists, right, then what is the strength of association? For example, if there is association between salt intake and hypertension, so what is the strength of association? Means the bigger the strength of association, it will show that there is higher possibility that increasing salt intake can lead to hypertension. So two things can be determined with such type of the analytical study, whether the statistical association exists or not. If such statistical association exists, then what is the strength of association? For example, you may have heard about the odd ratio. If the odd ratio is 6, right, if there is odd ratio of 6 between cigarette smoking and causing lung cancer, then it can be said that smoking leads to 6 times more chance of causing cancer than as compared to the non-smoker. If this association is 10, strength of association 10, odd ratio is 10, then we can say that there is 10 times more chance of lung cancer by the smoking as compared to the non-smoker, right? So the cohort study, it is to obtain additional evidence to refute or to support existence of an association between suspected cause and disease, right? If there is association is there between cause and disease, for example, smoking and lung cancer, whether smoking leads to lung cancer or not, whether salt intake lead to hypertension or not, high salt intake lead to hypertension or not, whether this increasing sweeteners, I mean to say sweet diet, lead to diabetes or not, right? Whether coffee consumption leads to pancreatic cancer or not, right? So this type of association can be studied by cohort study, right? So these synonyms of the cohort study is also known as prospective study because it proceeds from cause to effect. Cause is smoking and effect is lung cancer. So prospective study, we have to study the population who are smokers, and we have to follow this population over a period of some years, say for 10 years. And among smoker, how many of them develop lung cancer? That we have to compare with the non-smoker population at the end of 10 years, right? So that is prospective study. It is also longitudinal study. It is also incidence study because incidence can be obtained through this study. Incidence of disease can be calculated through this study. So it is also incidence study. And as it is prospective study, it is also known as forward-looking study. It is forward-looking study, right? So these are the synonyms of cohort study. Let me check how many of you are there online. I have to change the screen to see your comment, as well as if I want to switch over to the slide, then I have to again change the screen, right? Is the screen visible in full? I meant to say this PowerPoint slide is visible fully or it is minimized? Write down in chat box. Is this screen PowerPoint slide is visible as full slide or it is as minimized? And can you see the marking also, whatever I am making over there? Reply in chat box. Is the PowerPoint slide visible as the full screen? Minimize. Some of are seeing. No, not currently. Whenever I am teaching you at that time, right? Okay. Is the slide changed or not? Is the slide changing or not changing? Concept of, I am over the concept of cohort study. The slide heading of the slide is concept of cohort study. Is it changing or not? Is the slide changing or not? Is the slide changing or not? No. Is it not changing? Let me share it again. Let me share it again. I am sharing it again. Okay, concept of cohort study. Now you can see this concept of cohort study. Okay. So the term cohort is defined. Cohort means what? It is the group of people, right? It is the group of people who share a common characteristics or experience within a definite period of time, right? For example, the children born in 2020 are considered as the cohort of the group of the people who are born in 2020. So the cohort is defined as the group of people who are having the common characteristics, common experience, right? Cohort word actually originated from the army, right? So, for example, students of the fourth year class, are considered as the cohort because they share the common characteristics like fourth year, right? Students of the second year class, they are considered as the separate another cohort. So, the cohorts are identified prior to the appearance of the disease investigation, right? So, here in this cohorts are identified prior to the disease, right? Prior to the disease, that is the one of the distinguishing feature. The study group so defined are observed over a period of time to determine the frequency of the disease among them, right? This, first of all, what happens, that cohort are identified. Suppose cohort of the people who are taking who are smokers, they are identified, then they are followed up, they are observed over a period of time, right? And to determine the frequency of disease among the cohort of the people who are smoking, how many of them develop lung cancer, that is frequency of the disease, right? So they are followed up. So that study proceeds from cause to effect. Study proceeds from cause to effect is the characteristic of the cohort study. Okay. Now further, right? Indication for cohort study. When this cohort study can be done, right? When evidence of an association between risk factor and disease is there, at that time cohort study can be considered. Then when exposure is rare, but the incidence of the disease is among is high among exposed. Exposure is rare, right? But the incidence of disease can be considered as the high among exposed. Suppose those who smoke are having the lung cancer, more chance of cancer or incidence is higher, right? Then this study can be considered. When attrition of the study population can be minimized, means lost to follow up. Suppose people are enrolled today and we have to follow up after 10 years. Then among 100 people who are enrolled today, after 10 years, we cannot trace each and every one. Now, some of them may have moved to another place, some of them may have changed their contact details, some of them may have leaved earth also, right? So attrition, if the attrition is going to occur, definitely it will going to occur, but attrition is minimal. In that case, this cohort study can be considered. If attrition will be there, then we will not be having any results, right? And when fourth requirement, when ample funds are available, because this study requires more fund. So in cohort, there will be study. Cohort is the study group. Those people who are smoking are cohort, And control is general population, those people who are not smoking. I'm taking the example of cigarette smoking and lung cancer. Those people who are smoking are considered as the cohort, and control means those people who are not smoking are considered as the controls. They are general population, right? They can be under another cohort, but they are considered as basically cohort, right? So general consideration, the cohort first of all must be free from the disease under study. When the study begins, the cohort must be free from the disease under study, right? So those who are selected as the smokers, they should not be having the lung cancer at the start of the study. In this topic, we will be always taking the example of cigarette smoking and lung cancer, right? So those people who are smoker should not have lung cancer at the start of the study, right? Both the groups should be equally susceptible to the disease under study. Means both the cohort as well as control must be equally susceptible to disease. Means both have the equal chance except the factors which we are studying, right? Both the groups should have equal chance to develop the lung cancer under study. For example, if the cohort of the people, our cohort of our people, those who are smoking is between 40 to 50 years, and control is children, control are children, right? Then it is not so that both are equally susceptible, because children have maybe having the less chance of development of the lung cancer. So our cohort as well as control group both should be matching age wise also. I have given the example of the age, right? Age wise they should be matching also. They are having the equal susceptibility. As we know that as the age increases, chance of development of cancer increases, right? So they should be matching. Both the groups should be comparable in respect of the all possible variable. I have already given example of age. And they should be comparable to age, they should be comparable to sex, they should be comparable with the place of residence, they should be comparable with each and every characteristic, occupation also, right? Because this can influence the frequency of the disease, right? The diagnostic and eligibility criteria of the disease must be defined beforehand. So how we are going to diagnose lung cancer, whether we are going to diagnose by a CT scan or by biopsy, right? And eligibility criteria, they should be also defined before the hand. Again, I repeat, these are very important point of the cohort study. Cohort must be free from the disease in the study. Both the groups should be equally susceptible to the study disease population under the study, and both the groups should be comparable in respect of the all possible variable. Right? They should be equally susceptible, they should be comparable. Diagnostic and eligibility criteria of the disease must be defined beforehand. Right? These are the consideration that should be taken before carrying out the cohort study. So you can see in the picture that this is the target population. This is showing target population from which we take the sample, right? So process of sampling, there are various process of sampling. Can anyone tell in chat box that by which process sampling can be done? What are the methods of sampling? Write down in chat box. What are the methods of sampling? Can anyone tell what are the methods of sampling? Write down in chat box. What are the methods of sampling? What are the methods of sampling? Write down in chat box. Yes, I am waiting for your reply. By which method you select the sample? None of you can tell. Have you heard about simple random sampling, systematic sampling? No one? I'm doubting whether the slides are changing or not. Why the slides are not changing? Stratified same link. Okay. When I change the slide, is it changing or not? Currently, I have focused the slide which is showing you the figure from target population, sample populations are studied. I have focused that slide. It is not changing. Let me see it again. Now I think it is so. Can you see the slide of showing the method of sampling from target population, sample populations are studied? Now it can be shown, I think. Okay, so here you can see, so in procedure, elements of cohort study include selection of the study subject, right? I think now it is changing. Okay. So elements include selection of the study subject. First of all, we have to select the study subjects, right? Then obtaining data on exposure, right? How much exposure is there? How much means, for example, in cigarette smoking and lung cancer, how many cigarettes are smoked per day, or how many cigarettes per day are smoked for over a period of time? Means how much period is there? Exposure is for how much period? So frequency as well as duration of the exposure. Here both the things are obtained, right? Selection of the comparison group, that is control group, and then follow up of the control as well as cohort group. Then data entry and analysis. So these are the elements of cohort study. Selection of the study subjects, means selection of study, I mean to say samples from the population. Then obtaining data on exposure, frequency as well as duration of the exposure. Selection of the comparison group, right? Follow up and analysis. So first of all, selection of the study subject. So general population, geographically this population, for example, you want to carry out study in Gujarat, so you have to just select the population who are residing in various area of Gujarat. Or if you want to carry out a study in a single city, for example in Jamnagar or Rajkot, right? Then you have to select the samples population who are residing in Jamnagar or Rajkot and they are smoking, right? So exposed and unexposed segment of the population, there should be representative of the corresponding segment of the population, right? So there should be representative of the general population. For example, in Framingham Heart Study, one of the study which is being carried out since so many years is called Framingham Heart Study. It is the study on cardiovascular disease, right? So first thing we have to take care that general population should be selected, which should be the representative, right? Then special group. Select the special group as per the study requirement. Like for example, if you want to study about exposure of the COVID in disease, I mean to say incidence of the COVID in doctors, then professional group you have to select. You have to select the doctors. If your objective of the study that how many doctors are affected by the COVID in next 2 months, right? Then you have to select doctors. So not the general population. So professional group should be selected. This group are usually homogeneous. They should be having the same characteristics. They can also offer advantage of accessibility and easy follow-up, right? So they will be having the easy follow-up also and accessible also. Another example is Dole and Hill prospective study. Then we have to also select the exposure group. Cohort are selected based on the special exposure to physical, chemical, or other disease agent. So here in this example, exposure group, for example, doctors or nurses are frequently, they are having the more chance of exposure to coronavirus as compared to the other population. So they are now they are susceptible to this disease causing agent, right? More susceptible to the disease causing agent like this corona or tuberculosis than as compared to the general population. They are exposure group. So in this, the exposure may be rare, but the incidence of disease should be high. Radiology is exposed to X-ray, so chance of developing any genetic disorder because of the X-ray will be rare. But radiologists are more exposed to the X-rays as compared to the general population. Then another step is obtaining data on exposure. So after that, we have to obtain the data on exposure information which can be available from the record, information that can be supplied by the individual cohort member that can be obtained by medical examination, right? So how we can obtain the data? By records, by the information supplied by the individual. If you take the interview of the individual, that they will also provide the information, right? For example, those who are smoking, then we have to ask that how many cigarettes do you smoke every day. That information can be provided by the study participant. Says how many years you are smoking, that information can be provided by the study participants. Information can be obtained by the medical examination, right? So we have to carry out the medical examination or special testing of the cohort of the member. For example, to on the study of the hypertension, we have to measure the blood pressure, that is the testing. On study of the diabetes, we have to take the blood glucose level, right? That is the special testing of the cohort of the member, right? Information that require testing or evaluation environment within which the study member have lived or worked. So for example, doctors who are working in the hospital, so information about the hospital, whether they are what is the setup of the hospital, whether they are having the more chance of developing COVID exposure because of the such environment in the hospital is there, closed environment is there, proper ventilation is not available, proper hygiene is not maintained, right? So that environment is can be also studied. I give you the another example. In occupational health disease, another occupational health disease, if they are not wearing any PPE kit, right? So in that example, we have to study not only about the individual but also about the environment in which the cohort of the member live is also to be studied. Then reassignment of the cohort group according to whether or not they have been exposed or to the suspected factor, they can be reassigned. For example, if we take the people who are not smoker in cohort group, then they can be reassigned to the control group, because non-smoker are not the people who are under this cohort group. They should not be under the cohort group, they should be under the control group, and according to the degree of the level of exposure also they can be reassigned. Selection of the comparison group. First of all, internal comparison can be done. Age-wise internal comparison, sex-wise internal comparison can be done. For example, lung cancer. In cohort always more chance of development of the lung cancer. But among cohort group also, how many males are more developing how many males are developing lung cancer and how many females are developing lung cancer? Then we have to compare them percentage wise, whether the males are more developing lung cancer or female are developing more lung cancer. That is called internal comparison, right? External comparison, that is with the control group. External comparison, right? Comparison with the general population rate. For example, the rate of the lung cancer in general population is such, but in lung cancer in smokers, it can be different, right? The rate of the COVID disease in general population can be X, right? But the rate of the COVID in doctors can be Y. So we have to compare with this X with the Y, whether it is more than the general population or not, right? So internal comparison, here no outside comparison is required. Comparison is within the group only, and it is classified into several comparison group based on the level of exposure, right? So the classification here is one of the example that if any person is those person who are smoking 1/2 pack of the cigarette per day, so here the number of death are 24. 1 to 2 pack, number of deaths are 90, and 2 plus pack, number of deaths are 97, right? So as you progress from 1/2 pack to 2 pack plus, the number of deaths are increasing. Here, this is example. So death rate is increasing from 95.2 to 264.2. That is internal comparison. All these people are smoker. In this group, all the people are smoker, but those who are smoking less pack per day, they are having the less death rate as compared to those who are smoking 2 pack plus. So that is example of internal comparison. Now external comparison, when the information on the degree of exposure is not available, an external control which is similar to demographic or other variable can be used to study the smoker with the non-smoker. Basically in cohort study, external control is there. Control is external comparison. Comparing with smoker with the comparing non-smoker, incidence of the lung cancer among smoker as compared to the incidence of the lung cancer in non-smoker. This comparison is called external comparison. Okay. Comparison with general population, right? So here, if the control is not available, then general population, among general population, how much is the incidence of the smoking and lung cancer, that can be compared with the smoker, right? So limiting factor, many a times this general population rate may not be available. It is not always that in each and every disease or in each and every study we will be having the incidence of the disease among general population. It will not be so, right? And difficulty in selection and of the control and comparison group may be one of the limiting factor. Then follow up in cohort. As you know, cohort is actually a long lasting study. So every time, each and every time, we need the periodic medical examination of the each member of the cohort. Suppose smokers will need periodic examination each and after every 6 months or after every year, whether they have developed lung cancer or not, to see that, right? Reviewing follow-up will also require reviewing physician and hospital record, routine surveillance of the death record. Follow-up can be also done through mailed questionnaire, right? People can, the study participant, they will obtain the questionnaire, our questionnaire, by mail or by WhatsApp or by Google form, right? Or by telephone call, right? Or by home visits, right? So nowadays with the availability of the at various technology, home visits will not be required. We will have to mail this or we will have to send by the WhatsApp. They will fill frequently. So follow-up can be done by asking various questions, whether you have any symptoms related to lung cancer, whether you are developing chronic cough, whether you have any evening rise fever, whether you have loss reduction in the weight. Such type of the questions can be made frequently every 6 months, right? To assess whether they have any signs of lung cancer or not, right? So the groups are then followed. I think now the slide will be changing every time. Slide is changing every time, right? So the groups are then followed under the same identical condition over a period of time to determine the outcome of exposure, onset of disease, that whether they have developed disease or not, or whether any of the group of the member has death, right? So that can be followed. So in spite of best efforts, certain percentage of the loss, that is called attrition. Attrition can be there, right? Because this study are longer lasting study. So population may get attrition, right? So this is the framework of the cohort study. You can see that study cohort, they are exposed, they are followed, and we will have to see that how many of them develop disease and how many of them do not develop disease. Then control cohort, they are not exposed, barabar, and among them we have to see how many of the control develop disease and how many of them are not disease. So the study progress from cause to effect, exposed to disease, non-exposed to disease or not disease, right? And this 2 by 2 table represents, so here we have to write disease, here we have to see the exposed and non exposed. So this A means, here it is always denoted as A, B, C and D. A means, so among diseased people, how many are exposed? A shows what? Disease as well as exposed. B shows what? They are not having disease, but they are exposed, right? C shows what? They are not exposed even if they develop disease. And D is what? They are not exposed and they are not developing disease. So total exposed are what? How many people total are at total exposed? A plus B. Non-exposed are C plus D, right? Same way, if you want to write down here, A plus C will represent that they are deceased. A plus C is deceased. B plus D are not deceased, right? Then we have to calculate the incidence. From this cohort study, incidence rate can be defined. Incidence is what? The number of new cases occurring in defined population during specified period of time. So here the word new is very much important. Incidence suggests what? Only new cases occurring in a defined population during specified period of time. Right? So incidence formula is very important. It can be asked in your exam also. Number of new cases of the specific disease during a given period of time. For example, number of new cases, number of lung cancer in April month of 2021. That is right here. New cases of specific disease. Specific disease means lung cancer. Number of lung cancer in April month of 2021. And population at risk. Here we have to write down the population at risk and into multiply by 1000. Remember the formula of incidence. Incidence is equal to number of new cases of the specific disease during a given period of time divided by population at risk during that period. Okay. So here you can see in example cigarette smoking, yes, no, develop lung cancer, right? And these people, this column represent did not develop lung cancer, right? So among this cigarette smoker and lung cancer are 70, that is our A. Cigarette smoker but did not develop lung cancer are 6930. Cigarette smoker, no, these are people who are not smoking cigarette but they have developed the lung cancer. You can see that among the cigarette smokers, among the cigarette smokers, clearly you can see that there, as compared to 70, among non-smoker only 3 develop the disease, right? So incidence rate can be calculated as per following, right? As per the formula we have seen over here, number of new cases. So number of new cases are here in this column are 70 divided by 7,000. So population under study is 7,000. So among the cigarette smoker population is 7,000. Among 7,000, 70 are developing disease. So 70 divided by 7,000 into 1,000 according to this formula. Here there will be number of new cases will be 70. Population at risk is 7,000. Why 7,000? Because they are all smokers. 7,000 all are smokers. They are developing, right? They can be all 7,000 can have equal chance of development of the lung cancer, right? So 70 divided by 7,000 into 1,000 is 10 per 1,000. And here among non-smoker, 3 divided by 3,000. 3 divided by 3,000 into 1,000 means 1 per 1,000. So you can see clearly that among smoker 10 per 1,000 is the incidence and among non-smoker 1 per 1,000. So here among smoker 10 times higher, incidence of developing lung cancer is 10 times higher as compared to the non-smoker, right? Then estimation of the risk. Various risks can be estimated: relative risk, attributable risk, and population attributable risk. How relative risk can be estimated? Relative risk is equal to, remember this formula, incidence of disease among exposed upon incidence of disease among non-exposed. Very simple. Relative risk is the ratio of the incidence of disease among exposed and the incidence of disease among non-exposed. So here you know that incidence of disease among exposed is 10 and among non-exposed is 1. So the relative risk is 10. It means that smoker have 10 times more chance of developing lung cancer as compared to the non-smoker. We will skip this. Attributable risk. Attributable risk is what? It is the difference in the incidence of the rate among exposed and non-exposed. So here the formula is attributable risk is equal to incidence of disease among exposed minus incidence of disease among non-exposed divided by incidence rate among exposed. So as you know that in previous example, incidence of disease among exposed is 10, incidence of disease among non-exposed is 1, divided by 10. Why 10? It is incidence among disease among exposed. So 10 minus 1, that is 9, divided by 10 into 100, that is 90. So it indicates what extent the disease in the study can be attributed to the exposure. So 90%. So the disease, lung cancer, is 90% attributed to the cigarette smoking. Are you understanding? Lung cancer is 90% attributed to the smoking in our study. Then there is population attributable risk, right? Population attributable risk, it is the incidence of disease in the total population minus incidence of disease among those who were not exposed, right, to the suspected causal factor, right? So this provides the estimate of the amount by which disease can be reduced in the population if the suspected factor was eliminated, right? For example, here population attributable risk is 86% by this calculation. A smoker and non-smoker and death in total population. So here with this calculation, the population attributable risk is 86%. So it suggests that if we eliminate smoking among population, there will be 86% reduction of the lung cancer in population. If smoking can be eliminated from the population, there is 86% reduction of the lung cancer from the population. It suggests that. Types of cohort study, right? So based on the time of occurrence of the disease, or based on the time of occurrence of the disease, it will be of this type: prospective cohort study, that is the normal prospective cohort study. It proceeds from the cause to effect. Retrospective cohort study and combination of this, right? So group of people: smokers, non-smoker. This is control. Smoker are cohort, non-smoker are controlled. They both are followed up period of time, and outcome is measured. That is prospective cohort study, right? So that is same which has been which has been explained in this slide. I already told you. So one is the example of Framingham art study, right? Just remember this Framingham art study. It is very long study, started around 1948. It is started around 1948 and it is still continuing. That is a prospective cohort study. Smoking and carcinoma of the lung, right? These are various examples which has been given. I'm not going to read it each and every one. Retrospective cohort study, it proceeds from disease to exposure. Disease to exposure, right? So that is retrospective cohort study. Okay, first of all, diseased population and non-diseased population are as identified. Then in back we have to say that how many of them were exposed and how many of them were not exposed. That is retrospective cohort study. Okay, so here again you can see that measurement of the exposure and confounding variable. So here study begins here, outcome. Study begins at outcome. And then in back we have to say that how many of them were exposed and non-exposed. Right? And combination of these studies. First of all, we have to we have to start with the outcome, and we in back we have to see that how many of them were exposed and non-exposed. Then again we have to follow up them, and we have to see that, for example, a study beginning in 2021, we take people of lung cancer and those who are not having the lung cancer. We track them back 5 years back. So how many of them started 5 years back cigarette smoking? Then again we will follow up for next 5 years up to 2026, and we will say that how many of the present group will develop the lung cancer, right? That is combination, retrospective and prospective, both. Okay. Advantage of cohort study, here main advantage is incidence can be calculated. Okay. Then several possible outcome can be related to the exposure, which can be simultaneous studies. So cigarette smoking, if it develops lung cancer, if the cigarette smoking cause any other thing, for example hypertension, that can be also studied simultaneously. Several possible outcome related to exposures. For cigarette smoking is causing lung cancer, that can be studied. That is one thing, that is our primary objective. But along with the lung cancer, if the cigarette smoking is also causing hypertension, that can be also simultaneously studied. Cohort study provide direct estimate to relative risk, right? Direct estimate. Dose response ratio can be calculated. If we have seen that those who are having who are smoking 1.5 pack have the less chance of the death as compared to those who are smoking 2+ pack. death rate is higher in 2 plus pack. So dose response ratio, certain form of bias can be minimized, like misclassification bias, right? So such type of the bias can be minimized with the cohort study. Disadvantage of cohort study, it involves large number of the people, it will take long time, administrative problem, because longer duration of the time there can be loss of experienced staff, there can be loss of funding, extensive record keeping, right? It is not unusual to lose the substantial proportion of the population original cohort, so attrition rate can be higher in cohort study. Selection of the comparison group, right, which are representative of the exposed and non-exposed, that can be also this selection can become difficult, right? There may be change in the standard method of the diagnostic criteria. For example, standard diagnostic criteria for COVID disease is nowadays RT-PCR. It can be changed over a period of the time also, right? So cohort study are expensive, right? Because it will involve the long duration of the time, large population, large staff, right? The study itself may alter people behavior. So if we enroll the people in the study, the behavior of the people can change. For example, if we enroll the people who are smokers under the study, then they realize that they are studying for the smoking association of the smoking with the lung cancer. So they may start decreasing the dose of the smoking, as well as they may leave the cigarette smoking. The behavior of the people can be changed. Of course, it is beneficial to them, but for our study, these people can be considered in the attrition, right? Ethical problem can be present, practical consideration. So these are the disadvantage of cohort study. So difference between case control and cohort study: case control proceeds from the effect to cause, cohort proceeds from the cause to effect, right? So here case control start with the disease. They start with the disease, and we generally take back history. Here the cohort study start with the exposure, and then we proceed forward. Case control study test whether the suspected cause occurs more frequently though among the more frequently in the people who are deceased than those who are not. So here it says suspected cause. Actually, it has been changed. While cohort study tests whether the disease occur more frequently in those who are exposed than those who are not exposed. The first approach is to test hypothesis here in case control study, right? But also useful for exploratory study. It is reserved for the testing precisely, and it involves fewer number of the subject. In case control study, there are fewer number, while the cohort study involve a large number of the subjects, right? In case control study, yield will be relatively quick, right? It will yield quick result, because we have to start with the already deceased people, and then we have to look back. We have to check the records only. We have to go through the questionnaire only, right? So it will give you the quick results. While here in cohort study, we will be having the long follow-up period. In our example of cigarette smoking and lung cancer, actually smoking will take very long time to develop the lung cancer. So at least for 10 years we have to wait, right? Case control study is suitable for the study of the rare disease, while cohort study it is inappropriate when the disease under investigation is rare, right? Here case control study generally yields only relative risk or odd ratio, while cohort study main advantage it will yield also incidence rate. And apart from this, relative risk as well as attributable risk can be also obtained through the cohort study, right? So this difference between case control and cohort study, it is also frequently asked in the exam. Okay, so you have to go through it very properly. Relatively, this case control study are inexpensive, right? It will require less fund, while cohort study are expensive. Okay, so that is all about cohort study. We will end over here. Thank you very much.